creates some false expectations. You begin to think that everything you touch is going to turn to gold.
I thought that when we built the brewery in New York City, our sales growth would be not 45% the way it was last year, but maybe 145%.
You know, there's this old business adage that says that a business that isn't growing is dying.
When a company gears up for a growth spurt, they place themselves in a certain amount of danger at that point.
Slowing down growth is not something that's easy to do. In fact, it's very, very difficult.
Our top management here said this year we want to keep a lid on our growth, we want to consolidate, we want to get our systems in order and our house in order, then we'll be able to go the next step forward.
Growing a business is made possible by a grant from the over 500 Computerland stores across the country, the retail computer specialists that have been helping growing businesses for over 10 years.
One of the most perilous times in the development of business is when it's growing. More businesses fail because of growth or rapid growth than because of non-growth. The reason for this is that not only do rapidly growing businesses outstrip the available supply of money and other resources, but they tend to overwhelm the adaptive capacity of the people who work within them as well as their customers. When we look at nature, a plant for example, and examine the factors that are involved with the growth and the morphology of that plant, we look at air, we look at light, we look at water, we look at warmth, we look at soil. The question for you to answer as a business person is, what are those equivalents for a growing business? You have to discover what those factors are that allow a business to grow, not merely to expand. Because we know in nature that when things grow too rapidly, they get in trouble. When they don't grow at all, they're also in trouble. The question is not how to grow a business, but really, how do you grow a healthy business? How do you grow a business that really works for you who started the business, for the people who work with you, your employees, for the people you serve, your customers, and for the people that surround you and support you indirectly, which is your community? Those are the questions you always have to be asking in business, because without the answers to those, the growth of a business can take very perilous and distortive ways. When you ask this question, it's not that you will ever find the final answer or the ultimate answer, but in the asking, you will always be thinking about who you are, what it is you're doing, and how it affects others and yourself.
You have to be very, very good and virtually infallible in any business to go through very rapid expansion and not find yourself out of phase in at least some parts of your business. This last year was exactly that kind of year for us. We had a very tough year. We had an incredible year in 1986, and fiscal 1987, which just ended here in June for us, was a very tough year. Our profits must have dropped by a factor of, well, not even a factor, but they were 25% of what they were the year before.
Business grows in stages. It'll cruise for a while, and then suddenly it reaches a plateau. And you stay on that plateau for a certain while, and then it'll start deteriorating unless it goes through a whole revolution and a whole evolution and changes character, and then it becomes almost a completely different business.
When a company gears up for a growth spurt, they place themselves in a certain amount of danger at that point, because if you put on extra people, you buy extra equipment, you have extra room, and then if the sales did not come that you are anticipating, then you could become very vulnerable at that point in time. And I feel that we're in one of those periods right now. We've just moved into our new building, hired expertise to help complement our management team, and now we need sales in order to put the required amount of money on the bottom line again.
We can always sell more than we can make. You know, that's been the incredible thing about the business from the beginning, you know, from the first few days in the old gas station when we used to hang out the international no ice cream sign, you know, the circle with the cone in the middle and a slash through it when we ran out of ice cream. And, you know, right now, there are people in parts of the country that can't get their Ben & Jerry's. It's a horrible thing. We're stressed out. We're maxed out here. So in that respect, it's hard.
We had no idea that we would have as rapid a growth as we actually ended up experiencing. We knew that we had a good concept, and we knew that we were going to, at least we thought we were going to do extremely well. But we actually grew so fast for a while that it was everything that all of us, especially the partners, could do, working 14 or 15 hours a day just to make everything happen. Some days you thought, God, why did I do this? You know, it was much easier working in a corporation than it is with this kind of growth. So you get tired, you get burnt out, and you have serious doubts about whether or not you're going to be able to hang on while it's pulling you through the woods, so to speak.
I remember one time we figured how big of a company we would be in 15 years if we kept doubling our growth every year, and we got this roll of paper, and we rolled out this roll of paper for 150 feet, and we started putting zeros, you know, a one and all these zeros, and it's trillions and trillions of dollars. It was ridiculous. So somewhere we had to put a stop to growth, because we couldn't, with this high growth, we couldn't achieve our long-term goals. Slowing down growth is not something that's easy to do. In fact, it's very, very difficult. There's lots of books, business books, that tell you how to increase sales. Nobody tells you how to decrease sales. And that's what you're talking about. One of the problems that you have is all these young, keen employees that you have are fighting you every inch of the way. You tell them, well, look, we're only going to increase sales 30% next year, although we know we could sell 100% easily if we made the stuff. And, you know, I remember one time we put a little tiny ad in New Yorker, just that big, and New Yorker called us and said they had the biggest response of any ad that's ever been in New Yorker magazine. And my attitude was, oh, God, you know, let's not advertise in New Yorker again. This is disastrous, because we got catalog requests coming in like crazy. We ran out of catalogs, and then we couldn't supply catalogs. I mean, it really caused a mess.
There were times during the real rapid growth that customers would ask us to take on their account or ask us to open a new area for them or go into a new area, that we would just sit down with them and tell them that we'd rather not do it than to do it incorrectly. And that as soon as we felt that we were in a position, we would go back to that customer and say, we are ready to take your business on, or we're ready to go into that particular area for you. I think even when you're in a rapid growth time frame, that it's very important for it to be planned rapid growth, because I do think that our turning away business when we didn't know if we could handle it or not was a decision that was a good one, because it kept us from failing in those areas where we could have lost that customer permanently. But by postponing putting that customer on, then we were able to expand where we could handle it and fulfill the commitment that we'd made to the customer.
I don't think I've ever convinced anyone in the company to slow down growth. I don't think it's... I've never been very successful at it. I essentially went through my own mind and tried to decide why I was in business. And in doing that, we came up with certain criteria for managing our growth. Like, for instance, I told everybody that I never ever wanted to go back to this period in the mid-'70s when we had this explosive growth, cash flow problems, having to call suppliers and tell them, you know, the check is in the mail, this stuff. I never wanted to go through that again. So one of the ways is that I require that our debt-to-equity ratio never goes down negatively, which means that we always see ourselves gaining on our debts. In other words, next year I want to be owing less money than I did the year before. And as long as we keep that going positively, it keeps you out of hot water.
The rapid expansion, our retail investments, creating an infrastructure that wasn't really being supported by enough sales yet. A combination of many events really caused us to tighten our belts and change our focus from expansion and sales to really reevaluating every department in the company, where our expenses were going and how we can keep spiraling the expenses from just getting completely out of hand. When our banks come to talk to us, they say this is textbook stuff. And we said, well, wish we'd read the textbook. We could have anticipated a little more. But the fact is that business goes through its cycles. It goes through its ups and downs. And if you're in business for long, you certainly have to have a feeling for that. And if you're sharp, you've got to anticipate those. You've got to also anticipate them to the degrees that they happen. For us this year, it happened to much stronger degrees than we thought.
We've always been able to sell more ice cream than we can make. So there's always been an incredible amount of pressure on our production department to keep up with the demand. And we've been doubling in size since the year we started. So the first year, we probably had about $200,000 in sales. The second year, $400,000. The next year, $800,000. And then soon it was, last year we went from $10 million to $20 million. That was an incredible jump. And we're still trying to catch up from that growth. We realize that we can't continue to grow at that rate. And we also realize that we need to slow down in order to consolidate, in order to develop our internal systems and get our people working well together. It's hard. It's really hard. We're, there's this old business adage that says that a business that isn't growing is dying. And, there's a lot of members of our company that feel that we shouldn't try to slow down, that we should keep on trying to ride this wave. But I see it as all of us in the company, all paddling, body surfing in front of this wave, trying to keep up with the wave, and we're all paddling alone, and we're all having a really hard time. We're getting really worn out, and I've suggested that we just kind of drop back a little and stop trying to stay out in front of the wave, and just drop back and build a boat. And if we take the time to build a boat, then we can go anywhere we want.
But it's not easy to do. People around here say, I don't have time to stop to build the boat. And it's true. And in terms of slowing down, sometimes it seems like there's so much momentum that's generated that decisions that we make now in order to slow down won't really have a major impact until a year or two from now. And from now until that time, we still have to continue to catch up and yet continue to go into new areas and meet all the opportunities that are facing us. It's a very complicated situation for us.
Some people think that if you stop growing so much, if you stop trying to ride that wave, you're going to fall behind the trend and you're going to lose your momentum, and then your sales are going to fall off, and then the company's not going to be viable anymore. I believe that unless you drop back and try to consolidate and work toward getting your organization an excellent organization, that would be the death of the company.
Sometimes consolidating times also can be very enjoyable too, because they're a chance to rest, a chance to regroup, a chance to reassess the directions you're going in. And it's a sort of a rhythm and a pattern that's not much different than the rhythm and patterns that we have in our personal lives. But there's a time to really be gunning and going forward, and then there's a time to take a rest and relax and assess where you're going and check the landscape and get a real overview. So I don't mind the fact that there are times when the business is telling you, and the market is telling you, slow down, you're going too fast, you need a moment of or a period of time to reassess. We really consciously, as a management decision, our top management here said this year, we want to keep a lid on our growth, we want to consolidate, we want to get our systems in order and our house in order, then we'll be able to go the next step forward.
There is a natural size for every company. I think a lot of companies get into trouble when they delude themselves into thinking they can be the biggest company in the world or whatever. They start out from scratch, and in 3-4 years they're a $500 million company. It's amazing. And but the thing is, it's like a tree with no roots. They haven't built up a good base, and they're ultimately going to crash.
But while rapid growth is difficult to handle, it is not a given. Growing a business is a continuous series of surprises, even revelations. In other words, it's hard to grow a business, but once you get it growing, it's hard not to grow. When you're growing too fast, your employees will be the first to tell you. But if you're growing too slow, it's the marketplace that's trying to tell you something.
We're learning by School of Hard Knocks, which is one of the best schools around, that some of our ideas are not working. We back up, we try to correct, and we hope we don't make big mistakes. One thing we are learning, though, is when you make a mistake in the location of a store, that's it, because there's no way of picking that up and moving it somewhere else.
I really thought that there would be more loyalty to New York City beer than there was. I thought that more people would drink New Amsterdam and try New Amsterdam beer because it was a New York City beer. And I thought that when we built the brewery in New York City, our sales growth would be not 45% the way it was last year, but maybe 145%. And I guess in that sense, I misread the market. I thought that the fact that it was produced here would have a stronger marketing influence than it actually did. And you know, that's something that you never know till you do it.
We'd had the most unusual experience of opening a business and being successful from the first day. That happened in the Berkeley store. We had planned to open on a Saturday at 10 o'clock, and we had been baking and preparing for 3 days to make even enough product for that first day's business. We weren't ready at 10 in the morning, so we gave ourselves a 2-hour extension. We had done no advertising. We opened the doors at noon. The store filled up. It was full for 3 hours. All the product was gone 3 hours later, and we closed. And then we had, fortunately, it was a Saturday, and we were closed Sunday and Monday. We had 2 more days to get ready for Tuesday morning business. That was our beginning. That success creates some false expectations. You begin to think that everything you touch is going to turn to gold. There are a lot of things that you don't learn. It wasn't until our 3rd store that we began to realize that it isn't automatic. You can't count on it. You can't count on opening a store and having the crowds pour in.
It undermines your confidence. It undermines your sense of capability because you don't see what it is you've done any differently from the recipe you had before that was so successful. And I think one of the things that happened to us in this period, in this transition period, is a lot of our illusions and a lot of our preconceived notions about what it's like being in business and what you have to do and the way you have to do it were shattered.
We've learned so much. We've learned the importance of location and the importance of traffic and the importance of demographics and the importance of expanding our very narrow ideas, even of what our product is and what our clientele wants.
One of the pains of any growing business is competition, and in some cases, big competition. When you're small, your business is usually ignored, but as you grow, you will be noticed, especially by your rivals. Much has been said and written about competition using the metaphors of war, while little has been said about the effectiveness of candor, humor, and honesty. When Ben & Jerry's was being knocked about by their competition, they didn't get mad and they didn't get even. They got very imaginative and very funny, proving that sometimes laughter can be a more effective tool against competition than litigation and conflict.
Well, when we started to sell our ice cream in northern New England, in Maine, and New Hampshire, and Vermont, none of the big boys really cared about us because those are very small markets, and nobody really thinks of those places as a place to sell any products because there's no people there. But when we started selling our ice cream in Boston and Connecticut, Pillsbury, who had just bought Haagen-Dazs, came to our distributors and said, if you continue to sell Ben & Jerry's, we're not going to sell you Haagen-Dazs anymore. So we realized there that this could really strangle our company, and that could have been the death of Ben & Jerry's right there. And we also realized that it was probably illegal. It's called a restraint of trade under the federal antitrust laws. And we thought about that and realized that if we tried to fight them in court, there would never be any chance that we'd win, because a company the size of Ben & Jerry's has no chance in court against a company the size of Pillsbury, who has a whole battery of lawyers in their legal department and virtually unlimited resources. So we decided that we would take our case to the people, that if we were going to go down, we were going to at least let as many people as we could know what was happening.
Ben has a unique ability to take situations that seem like liabilities and turn them into assets. Things that most people would be stopped by or stuck by, Ben kind of looks at them in a different perspective. He employs lateral thinking. Instead of going right at something, he kind of moves to the side and looks at it from a different point of view. I mean, here was a situation that was life-threatening to our company. I mean, this was survival for us, and instead of saying, you know, our backs are against the wall, Ben would say, you know, let's take our case to the public. Let's tell them what's going on. Let's let them know. Let's tell them we're a little company, but, you know, we're the guys next door, and come help us.
We sent Jerry over to the Pillsbury corporate headquarters in Minneapolis, and he was a one-man picket there outside their headquarters, holding up his picket sign that said, what's the doughboy afraid of, and distributing pamphlets telling people the story of what Pillsbury was trying to do to us. And then we rented airplanes that flew over Boston with the banner, what's the doughboy afraid of? And we put a sticker on the side of each one of our pint containers saying, what's the doughboy afraid of, and including an 800 number. And we started getting 100 calls a day on that 800 number. And when you called it up, there'd be a message from Jerry or myself telling people what Pillsbury was doing to us, and asking them to leave their name and address, and we would send them a Doughboy kit, which included a What's the Doughboy Afraid of bumper sticker and a pamphlet and 2 write-in letters, one to the Federal Trade Commission and one to the chairman of the board of Pillsbury. And after a while of this, you know, our lawyers were negotiating with Pillsbury's lawyers, and they agreed to settle out of court. And they agreed to let us continue to use these distributors, and we agreed to stop using the Doughboy's name in vain.
So often now in this culture, we tend to lionize businesses that grow extremely rapidly, overlooking, if you will, the fact that the people are burnt out, that there's a revolving door policy in personnel, and that a lot of people simply didn't have a really great time being the customer or the employees of those businesses. If you're starting a business, you want to create a business in a world that you want to be within. You don't want to create something that's going to terrorize you or the people you work with or your customers. And in order to do so, you have to have an idea that there are limits to growth. That is to say that rapid growth isn't necessarily the most healthy thing. That there are levels of development and changes in a business that are appropriate for your business. And I believe that every business has an inherent rate of growth which is appropriate for you. And I cannot tell you what it is. I don't think anybody else will be able to. You have to figure that out yourself. That's what it means to be an owner and a manager of a business.
I've never felt that the business from the beginning was that planful. One thing led to another, and instead of stopping it, I continued. And I let events take me to a certain point. We both always remember that, and when we get a new idea and feel that it's appropriate, we both have quite a good appetite for saying, let's see, let's try this, let's see what happens next. Although I have learned over the years that planning and trying to foresee what problems will come up is very useful and very necessary to a growing business. We still have this appetite for, let's try it, let's see what will happen, let's solve some of the problems when they come up.
We were living at our work, and that was all that was important to us. It was more than just a job, it was something we wanted to do. And we weren't making a lot of money, but we were making enough to get by, and if there needed to be a certain sacrifice, we made the sacrifice. There was never any question about it. If it meant you didn't get paid one week, but the business would still be there, you did it. I mean, you do whatever you need to do.
I feel very strongly that where we were tested in this business was in terms of having the tenacity to push forward, to not just simply say, oh my God, we've now made a mistake, what are we going to do? We didn't say that. We said, oh my God, we're going to have to look at what we're doing and how we're doing it and figure out how to make it work right. So there was never a moment when you said to yourself, is this worth doing? Should I be doing it? Maybe I am in the wrong business. Maybe I should be doing something else. No. Instead, you say to yourself, I've got it sort of right. I obviously don't have it all right. I'm going to figure out how I'm going to make it right, and I'm going to do those things that need to be done.
You know, it's just been a real exhilarating experience building a brewery. I mean, you look back, I mean, what pays off is that I look back at this accomplishment, and even if it's not the world's most profitable enterprise or the world's greatest economic entity, you know, this is not going to be IBM, it's not a Xerox, it's not like working for Merrill Lynch. You know, I walk through the brewery and I've got this real sense of economy. I've built a brewery. It's amazing. It's just what I dreamed of. It really is what I sat down and thought of 5 years ago or 6 or 7 years ago in 1980. Hey, there's my brewery.
Next time on Growing a Business, we'll look at numbers, not accounting, but numbers, because they express the essential relationships between all aspects of a growing business.
Growing a Business was made possible by a grant from the over 500 Computerland stores across the country. The retail computer specialists that have been helping growing businesses for over 10 years.